I'm Riley Chow. I'm here with Amanda Spears, Zach Laws, and Tom O'Brien. Tom, we missed you last week when we were talking about movie and variety series, but you missed nothing. So it's nice to have you back. I want to ask you about Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series, because before the nominations came out, Henry Winkler was 8th place in the odds. And Amanda, you had him in 6th. The rest of us did not have him in our top 6. And as soon as the nominations came out, he shot up to 1st place. You're predicting him. Can you explain the shift here? Why was Gold Derby doubting him before? And is it right that everybody's banking on him now?
Sorry.
I think that Sean Hayes not getting nominated really shook up the nominations. And I think that that was a big factor. Why it was Winkler? I think it was that he's got a story to tell. And very often in these close races, if you have an interesting career arc, that it may actually work to your benefit. And I think it may work to Winkler's benefit here. I know that Emmy voters are not thought to be sentimental, and it's very possible that they may bypass Winkler for someone else. And I'm kind of predicting that they will. But I think that his narrative is very compelling. And I think that may be what Gold Derby voters are responding to.
So Amanda, you actually had him in your predictions. For you, was it just like if he gets in, then you'll predict him to win, one of those contenders?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a new show. It debuted in the last run-up to the Emmys. So it was one of those, if he can get in, that's going to be the biggest problem. Because I also had Tony Shalhoub in there also. And I think, he's also someone who shot up immediately because they are really big contenders. And to Tom's point, he's right. It is a lovely arc. He was nominated 46 years ago. He is in it to win it. He is doing the rounds. He's done 2 interviews with Gold Derby. And his people are making it known. He's never won an Emmy. And that is so smart. So for me, I think he's so darn charming. And even for those people who do watch the episodes, he would win this on episode 2 in this group. Really, this year, that episode is perfect for him. So I think it's just kind of lined up really well. Now, I will say, I'm not like 100% sure he's going to win. I do think for Tony Shalhoub, if the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel goes on a good run, he could be carried along for the ride. It's the same thing with. I'm just looking at the list. With Brian Tyree Henry, if Atlanta goes on a good run, it could take him along for the ride. But I think for Winkler, it's such a charming campaign, and he was so good in the last couple of episodes also. So I think he's going to win.
Okay. Hi, Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Tony, where do you sit on Henry Winkler?
I think he's in a really, really good position based on probably what you've already said, admired veteran looking for his first acting win at the Emmys. They're going to want to give, I can't imagine them letting Barry go home without at least one acting prize. So Winkler's the obvious, I think, choice. I think all of us are agreed that anybody but Alec Baldwin.
Zach, can you attest to whether Henry Winkler actually is, doing the rounds? Has he been wining and dining you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he was over at my apartment the other night, sharing a bottle of Chateau
Chicken cacciatore and everything.
Yeah,
trying to it was chicken a la king on the show.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, trying to get my vote, even though I'm not a member of the Academy, but I play one on TV. No, Henry Winkler really is more so than any buddy that I can tell is really making the rounds. And because why shouldn't he? Like, he has a really good chance to win, for all the reasons that everyone's talked about, the fact that he is this television legend who has never won, and they're making that known. The fact that he is really great in the show. I mean, he's that classic kind of comedy supporting actor winner, like Sean Hayes, was in the original run of Will and Grace. Very kind of over the top character. The thing that would, I think, prevent him from winning is, the name that Tony brought up, the fact that they do like to give the same person an award over and over again. The fact that Donald Trump still is in the news, which makes them feel as though they're making a statement, I guess, by voting for Alec Baldwin. The one thing, though, is that in this category, at least, we haven't seen the same person win over and over again for the past few years. I think it was in 2015, Tony Hale, then Louie Anderson, then Alec Baldwin. So it's not as though somebody's been on a winning streak lately here. But I think things have lined up pretty nicely for Henry Winkler. I think that, if there is somebody who's going to beat him, it's probably Alec Baldwin. But I think, if they're trying to give it to somebody new, it'd maybe be Brian Tyree Henry or Tony Shalhoub or even Kenan Thompson. I wish Titus Burgess could win eventually, but,
I just hope that speaking of Titus Burgess, I really hope Tina Fey, because I know they're releasing the last season in 2 installments, and I really hope she's got something amazing planned for him to kind of give him one last great chance at this, because he really should have won last year.
Yeah.
On paper, he really should have been the winner. He was a SAG nominee. He had one of the top 10 episodes of television of the year. Yeah.
Amanda, you've got Titus Burgess in 3rd, but yeah, he's never won by now, so you don't think you should give it a rest?
It's probably wishful thinking. I'm probably going to move Brian Tyree Henry up. I probably was just sad about how low he was in the prediction center when I did that. But to Kenan's point, to Zach's point about Kenan Thompson, this is a guy who's been on that show 15 years. It's so nice that he got in, that one of the SNL men who's there week to week got in. And you know what? Even if he doesn't win, which he's probably not, he still made history with this, because he's the first Black actor on that show nominated since Eddie Murphy. So he's not in bad company. And Eddie Murphy was nominated when the category was comedy, musical, or varieties, special. So just comedy supporting actor. This is very impressive for him to finally break through, and I'm happy for him.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. And I think that I would much prefer, of the SNL nominees, that he win over Alec Baldwin. Because Alec Baldwin's Trump last year was novel and was fresh. And this year it was the same old, same old. And it was fine. It was good. But he gets out of his makeup and then shows up for the bows at the end.
Yeah,
Thompson works his single episode, jumping from character to character. He's one of those yeoman comics, I would put him in the ranks of Dan Aykroyd and Phil Hartman in terms of doing all kinds of things within an individual episode. And I would love it if he wins. I'm with you, Amanda. I don't think he will, but he's a fresh face and a fresh alternative.
Well, he's not a fresh face, because he's been on TV since he was a child. He was doing variety on Nickelodeon. So
that's true, but he's
it's
fresh
still
for
nice. Yeah, he's not robbing or in.
There's been a lot of buildup with Kenan Thompson, because he has been for so long been considered underappreciated, and we've seen these giant profiles in the New York Times and the Hollywood Reporter, Variety. I'm wondering if maybe there is enough goodwill for him to actually maybe be a dark horse winner here.
I don't think so. I think that the problem is there's just, he's got to get past the 3. And when I say the 3, I mean the 3 shows that have a legitimate, serious chance of winning comedy series. I really honestly think this is the category SNL could potentially drop. Like they might be able to hold on to Kate McKinnon one more year. We'll talk about that later. But this is the one I think they're going to lose to one of those three where it's like, I don't see how the winner doesn't come from Barry, Maisel, or Atlanta.
Well, SNL did very well, though. Like, that's the thing, is that there's all this kind of negative buzz around the show. This year, I feel, at least compared to last year, Tom, you're saying that, you know, it's not as novel anymore about Alec Baldwin doing the impression, but it still got all these nominations, and it got nominations that it didn't get last year. So I can't tell if the Emmy voters have actually moved on, or if they're content to just go with the same old, since, you know, everybody still hates Trump and Alec Baldwin is still getting nominated. I will say the point against him, though, is that he's not up for Match Game or Will and Grace, though.
Wasn't he up for Match Game last year?
He was, yes.
So.
Yeah. I think his support's kind of dropped. It's like, okay, we've done that. And for a lot of people, it's just kind of getting on their nerves a little
I
bit.
have to wonder how much even Baldwin wants to win.
I don't think he wants to at all. I mean, you can tell by his submissions that he doesn't want to. I mean, last year he submitted an episode that he was only in the opening of, as opposed to the one that he hosted. He was the last person to send in any kind of submission when we were doing our Emmy episode submission lists at the beginning of the season. I don't think he particularly wants to keep doing it. I think he does it out of some kind of contractual obligation, perhaps. I think he would just as soon never have to wear that orange wig again. You know, so I can't imagine that he even wants to compete for this. I'm surprised he was even on the ballot, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, he can't. I mean, the show can just put him on the ballot.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe if he's impeached by the time the Emmys happen, we can all applaud if he wins again. You know. So.
Well, let's go back to I think it was Amanda who said really the top three. Rather than talk about who's not, I think Winkler, Shalhoub, and Henry. Would we agree that those are the top three?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to get a little bit of an added boost because they're in a comedy series nominee that has a legitimate chance of winning.
I have Baldwin in the top three just because he won last year, so I feel like it's my duty too. As far as
move him up.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth between Henry or Shalhoub being the third. You know what I mean? Just because you're right, Amanda, they are in the top two comedy contenders for series, and they could just as easily get swept along with there.
And you know, people have made making the argument out Laurie Metcalf being the actress. She's been nominated for an Oscar. She won a Tony Award. Tony Shalhoub just won his first Tony Award. We might be underestimating him. He's a 3-time winner. And this is not the same character he was playing on Monk. It is enough of a difference that maybe he can use his goodwill to sneak in. But personally, he shouldn't worry about this because, you know, he's got a good chance of picking up a Grammy for the band's visit. So he should be looking for his like supporting Oscar role because he'll need an O after that. I'm just saying.
I don't know. I've got it in first.
You got Shalhoub in first?
I do.
Hey, Tom, me too.
Well, why didn't you lead with that?
Yeah, why are you on my case about Winkler? You're buried the lead here. So why are you guys picking Tony Shalhoub?
I'd say it's just the sweet mentality. I mean, we talk about how maybe this is a place that they could award Barry. I don't think the Emmy voters really think like that. I think last year they kind of just awarded The Handmaid's Tale over and over again. They awarded Big Little Lies over and over again. They didn't give Feud or Fargo kind of anything major, or Stranger Things or Westworld didn't get anything major either. So I think if they're, if they're checking off The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I think he can go along for the ride. And then I think, actually, Tom, you go ahead. I thought you had Winkler in first, actually.
But I'm not necessarily saying the Tony win will help him, but it did raise his profile enormously. And I'm just, speaking as a voter, everybody has to see Mrs. Maisel to vote. Yes, people should see Barry, but Mrs. Maisel is probably higher in the series competition than Barry is. And he's such a respected actor. And the patterns of voting are, will come true. They may not go back to Baldwin. They may go back to their old favorite, Tony Shalhoub, who they voted for 3 times.
I think what really intrigues me about Winkler's campaign is he's almost using Gerald McCraney's playbook.
Mm-hmm.
He is any entertainment podcast you listen to, he has made himself available for an interview. We could start a podcast called What Did We Binge Watch Last Sunday? And literally he would make himself available for the 20 people who would listen to a podcast we start.
I think we'd have at least 25.
Oh, I'm sure we would, because of course. But he has made himself available to every outlet. He has done an in-person interview at Gold Derby. His people are making it very well known. He was nominated 46 years ago for the Fonz. Let's award the Fonz an Emmy. It's like this kind of thing that I could see how, even if they're going, and I am the biggest Mrs. Maisel fan, how even if they're, tunnel vision going to Mrs. Maisel, they might go, but I want to vote for Henry Winkler because I want to be part of him winning his Emmy, because won't it be a lovely moment? He'll get a standing ovation. And it will be a big kind of Emmy moment for that show. And I know they don't think that way, but I could still see how they're like, let's give the Fonz an Emmy.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to, and not to say that Tony Shalhoub is not this kind of person as well, because I mean, he is an actor.
He's not at the iconic standpoint as,
Right. He's also not. He's also, like we've said, a 3-time Emmy winner to Henry Winkler's 0. So if that's their playbook of making people aware that he's never won before, and it's not as though Henry Winkler is a disliked individual, you know what I mean? I mean, he's a very nice, humble, well-liked person. And so that's
who's never competed in a plurality vote. Exactly.
And also, I mean, I should say as well, to assume, I think we're also, with either Shalhoub or Henry, the assumption is that one of their shows could carry them along in a sweep, but I don't know if we can say with any certainty which one of those shows is going to sweep, right? I mean,
I think Atlanta is less likely to sweep.
I agree with you on that one, but I'm saying that if there's if we're going off of that logic, then I think maybe they're not quite as one's not as far ahead as the other. I don't.
Sure, I could miss across the board, is what you're saying.
And that's exactly.
Riley and I,
we all could.
Riley, I'm on the same boat with you, except for this category. But this is a category that, with the exception of directing, HBO has had 3 past winners with 6 awards. So this is a good. This is one of HBO's better categories on the comedy side. So he's, it's something different for him. I mean, I just watched episode 7 again, and he's talking about doing cocaine and doing a long day's journey into night into a 30-minute production, which I would totally want to see just out of curiosity to see how they did that 3-hour play in 30 minutes, by the way. But I do think he is almost the comedic relief. He's so funny in this.
And that's the thing. I don't know. Episodes don't necessarily matter the same way that they used to, but if they do at all on any level, Winkler really has, I think, for me at least, the strongest tape.
Absolutely.
The one thing that, in terms of tapes that hurts somebody, say like Shalhoub only has one scene 40 minutes into the Mrs. Maisel finale.
In my opinion,
it's a fantastic scene.
In my opinion, Shalhoub submitted the wrong episode, but
yeah,
he should have submitted the second episode.
Where he yells at Joel.
Well, he yells at that, and he's at the blackboard doing this math problem that's not really a math problem, and you're like, he's just so good in that one. I think he submitted the wrong episode.
But I think Winkler has so many things going from him. He has the narrative. The show has the popularity. He's got the episode. And
he's got Bill Hader and Alec Berg out there beating the drum for him too, where they're like, we were just so honored that he would even come in and read a little bit for us, because we knew we couldn't audition Henry Winkler. And they're like, he's never won an Emmy. They're hitting the bullet points too. He's never won an Emmy. He's never won an Emmy. He's never won an Emmy. So everyone.
And he also wisely didn't submit himself for Arrested Development, so he wouldn't split votes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's done so many things. I mean, really, it could be he's the most popular person in the category.
All right, let's wrap this up. Does anyone have any thoughts about Louie Anderson?
Thanks for playing.
Yeah, I'm glad he gets nominated every year, but he has his Emmy. The show has kind of failed to pick up a lot of additional steam. I mean, it failed to get Zach Galifianakis back in this year, so I think as much as I love him in the show, I think there's a feeling of been there, done that, unfortunately.
And it is like more like Tony Shalhoub, with the fact that like Sean Hayes, he won. People have this like in their head that he's won like 6 Emmys. Sean Hayes won once, people, for the first season, and then they just kept nominating him. So I think it's kind of like, what?
Second season.
It was a second. I thought he won for the first.
He wasn't nominated the first season. David Hyde Pierce famously mentioned that when he won. It was like,
we forget that
they didn't nominate him. But
anyways, he won one Emmy, and then the shtick kind of ran dry. Basically, it just kind of got the over the top zany just never worked again for him, and maybe the gimmick of voting for Louie Anderson only could work once, but he's still great, so he's still going to keep getting nominated.
And I will
He's
say,
really good.
I will say that he had an amazing, a really great submission. But I just think in this, since submissions don't matter as much, that show doesn't have the buzz that he did the first season.
An Emmy voter watching this, we encourage you to watch. All of the submissions, but Henry Winkler's is just so charming. Playing this down on your luck actor, auditioning for Man in Line #2.
I'll just say that it could very obviously be Henry Winkler, but if it's not, then I have a problem just because we only have 2 years of this new voting system. So last year they kind of went for more of the sweeps. The year before they kind of, tried to find these performances that they really liked and they liked specifically. And yeah, 2 years ago, we had people like Tatiana Maslany and Ben Mendelsohn and Regina King and Margot Martindale winning, where the whole time I was just thinking, what year is this? So that's why I kind of think maybe Alec Baldwin can win again, even if he was much more popular last year.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I mean, when you saw that weird